Hi, everyone. Steve French, Hills Pet Nutrition. I'm a principal scientist there. I am really a developer, so I develop products all day long. And my focus is, or for the last 3 years, 4 years, has been sustainable proteins. So there was a question asked of Megan Tuttle yesterday, and I'm sitting there going, ooh, I really want to answer that question. What are the alternatives to the animal proteins, right? Where are we going? And I think insect protein was mentioned. And that's one of the pieces. And that's one of the products we're launching, or we've just launched, actually. I think they're hitting store shelves right now. And these two products I developed myself, so spent the last 3 years of my life developing with insect protein. There's another one. There's a feline diet, and I brought a feline bag up here. Unfortunately, this is the chicken. Although it's the same cat on the pollock formula, so I'm not sure where we get our cat pictures from. But pollock meal is another one. Wild-caught, MSC certified Alaskan pollock meal is coming out very soon, so you're seeing that on the store shelves. In regard to the question that Megan got, I think there are existing proteins out there that are more sustainable, and we're looking into those, and I know other people are looking into those. That's the first step, right? We see this low-hanging fruit of certain proteins are more sustainable. But we are actually about to take a giant leap through a collaboration with Bond Pet Foods, first ever sort of industry type of situation. And Rich, there you are. I can't believe I just looked up and there you were. I thought I spotted you earlier. Rich Kellerman, he's here from Bond, and he'll be on one of the panels later, so you can ask him all sorts of questions. This partnership we have with Bond, it's going to be fantastic. We're in the weeds right now. We're getting stuff done. We're moving towards the approvals that we need to do. But I'm really excited about when we get to a point where we can start putting this new protein into our products. So there are technologies out there, and actually, I'm not sure there's any marketing folks out here. I apologize, but if you are marketing, marketing gave me talking points, and I was reading through the talking points, and it said new technologies. Well, the technology we're using, Rich, is not new. It's just we're repurposing it for what we need out of it. So there are technologies out there that can lead to a greater level of sustainability, and let's identify those and start using those. We are going to be using this technology to create an alternative for one of our favorite proteins that we use these days. And it's going to be not only more sustainable, but it's working towards this term I like to use of perfect nutrition for the cats and dogs. I think that these two are not mutually exclusive. Our sustainability is a journey, not a destination, and we're going to be making a lot of coincidental discoveries along the way. So with that, I want to introduce Darren Vanstone, who I just met 5 minutes ago. I appreciate it. He is going to be speaking to, did they put up your, no. Developing pet industry approaches to responsible protein sourcing. So with that, Darren.
All right. Thank you so much. I was hoping that was a gift for me. I thought, big thing of cat food, that'd be pretty amazing. Guess not. So again, thanks for having me here today. It's been a great couple days. I'm not normally comfortable with talking to this many experts. I like to talk to people with a little less knowledge. Makes it go a little faster. So, what's that?
Can I have a clicker?
You can.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm clicked. All right. Anyways. So we're really here to talk about responsible sourcing and the work that the PSC has done starting a couple years ago with the 4-factor framework, and then which was sort of the first step in moving towards sort of an industry approach, right? I think these are really large issues. We've heard a lot of really great information from a lot of companies that have done a lot of work, 30-page certification standards for a single species. So a lot of work has been done. When we think about impact, it's great to hear about the collaboration going internally. I'm going to challenge you as an industry and you as companies to collaborate outside of your own groups. I think you have a value to the human food chain and to the leather industry that you don't know about. And if you have any questions, you can ask Steffi Volo. She's been doing a lot of work in both those areas, but huge value. Okay, so we're here to talk about proteins. We're going to start off by talking about conventional proteins. So animal proteins, the majority will be purchasing commodity proteins, so those that are based in, that are raised in commercial conventional systems, so intensive confinement systems. So that's sort of where we're going to start, because I think that's really where most of us are working. So the goal and one of the objectives, the main objective of commercial animal production is to produce more food and cheaper, right? There's certainly a lot of work being done around quality and other things, but the goal really is to do that, and it does it really well. So when you think about it, that's actually been done in two different ways. We've done it through intensification, right? What that means is we've taken a lot of animals and we put them in a really small space. So when Tina's talking about her layer hens, they exist really well on pasture because she doesn't have 1 million of them, right? So in a conventional system, we would have 100,000 birds inside a multi-tiered system. There might be 10 of those on a single farm, and that's 1 million. So certainly the number of animals in the number of space. We're putting more animals on than the soil can handle. Second way we've done it is through breeding animals for higher productivity, right? So when we think about laying hens, the sort of progenitor, the genetic ancestor is the red jungle fowl. We could fight about Asian versus African, but we won't, because it doesn't matter. So they produce 18 to 24 eggs per year, and a modern laying hen will give you 330, 340. So almost one every day, right? So we've managed through selective breeding to get them from 18 to 24 to 330, 340. A lot of work's been done, but that's actually come at a cost and expense. Again, more inputs, more outputs, and certainly some animal welfare issues. So a responsible sourcing strategy then is just trying to figure out how we deal with that. It's really about how do we actually, through our understand and manage the negative impacts and the positive impacts we can have through our sourcing on third parties. So when we're thinking about agriculture, we're thinking about the environment, we're thinking about people and communities, and we're thinking about the animals themselves. All right, and I think we've heard a little bit about this. Actually, I think you've probably heard my entire presentation already, just from different people. But we're starting to see sort of people want agriculture to figure this out, right? The pressure's been on us for years, and we're starting to see regulation and legislation, right? So I always tell people that by the time we get to regulation and legislation, it's really on us, because we've had a long time to deal with it. So we bring this upon ourselves. The European Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive will make companies of a certain size, so 300 million euros or dollars per year, responsible for the negative impacts in their own supply chain. So if you currently are domiciled in the EU, you do more than 300 million, or if you sell into it and you are doing more than 300 million worldwide annually, you will be required through legislation to report your impacts and to manage and mitigate the negative impacts. I put the German one there because it's in play. Also, I just think that's the funniest name ever. I don't know what it is. And then we have, of course, the California Prop 12, which just came through. The Supreme Court has now validated it, so it's go. I think we're looking at July 1st is the last I've heard, before that gets implemented. So what that requires is that companies, retailers, restaurants in California are responsible for ensuring that there are no intensive confinement systems of a certain type for veal, laying hens, and pregnant sows in their supply chain. So really important, doesn't apply to you necessarily unless you're selling full muscle meats. but just understand that this pressure is happening. We're going to see the same thing come out in Massachusetts and Michigan. They've just been waiting for the Prop 12 Supreme Court ruling. We're also starting to see interest from weird places, right? So I work up with a lot of the human food chain, and we're really used to sort of campaigns, and we're used to benchmarks and assessments, but we're starting to see this more in the pet industry. And we're also seeing it in other industries that source byproducts, right? So same sort of thing that you're doing. So BMW and Jaguar Land Rover, this is really about the leather that they use in their cars. So they're currently under there's a lot of environmental organizations going after this. So they've somehow figured out that the source of that leather is actually the cattle caused the expulsion of the last uncontacted tribe in the Amazon, which is really interesting because we can't even figure out, like I do some work with the supplier, and we can't even figure out where their stuff comes from. So then, of course, we're starting to see some campaigns, ethical consumer in the UK, animal quality here. So campaigns, benchmarks. So you're starting to see a lot of assessment. I think it's interesting for two reasons. I think when we see this sort of pressure, I think we have to do something, right? If we want to be legally and compliant in the EU, we're going to have to deal with it. Just has to be done. And with that sort of pressure then comes support. So a lot of people are in it with you, and it gives you an opportunity to sort of work with those folks that are already doing the work and sort of simplify it a bit. I think the other thing I want to do is just sort of preempt this conversation that I hear in most of the byproducts industries that I work with, that a product can be sustainable just because it's coming out of a render, right? So this product was going to go waste anyways. The fact that we've actually used it and upcycled makes it sustainable. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that I can do the economics. We can talk about it. We heard that yesterday from Dave Carter that without the byproducts, we have producers and processors going into negatives, that we can sort of maybe hit break even with the human food chain, but it's really the byproducts that really put us into economic value. I'm just going to tell you none of these things exempt byproducts. So if you're sourcing from a rendering plant, you still need to figure this out. Okay, awesome. So a couple years ago, PSC did this four-factor framework, which is really about trying to figure out how you as an industry can approach this together. Big problems, big issues, lots of people to talk to. Really helps if you can do it collaboratively. You've identified the four factors that you're using, and we're going to talk about those for the rest of this time. I think ultimately we're going to remove nutrition, because Steve's just going to do it for us, so that'll be amazing. But as I mentioned before, a responsible sourcing strategy is really about figuring out what your impacts on third parties are and trying to manage those through your sourcing. That's really what it's about. I'm not going to talk about it too much just because of the complexity of your different supply chains. Traceability, which I think you'll probably be talking about later. We've heard a little bit about it. Look, animal welfare is really about the life of the animal from birth until slaughter. If you don't have traceability, you can't say anything about animal welfare, right? There's no animal welfare of a ham sandwich. There's deliciousness, but there's nothing like that, all right? Okay, we've heard this a ton of times. I don't have anything else to say. Let's just do this. All right, so the project that we're doing now is taking the first step, which was the four-factor framework, and we're trying to figure out how can we use the four-factor framework, I'm not going to say that ever again, to actually help us guide our strategies around recipes and sourcing, right? How do we do this? Okay, so the first step is we're going to provide a list of impacts for members of the PSC. We expect that you could share this with the broader pet industry. And of course, we're going to make sure that what we're going to give you is going to be common across species and production systems and regions, right? So you'll be sourcing from different regions, different production systems, and different species. Ultimately, the decisions that you make to manage the sustainability impacts of what you're doing you're going to sort of take a look at those three things. Those are the three things you're going to manage. Right? You're going to manage which animal you're sourcing, be that like a mammal, land animal, aquatic animal, or insect. You're going to make that decision. You're going to decide what kind of production system you want them to be in. So is it a regen ag system? Is it a conventional system? And you're going to figure out where you want to buy it from. So those are kind of like the three ways that we can manage it. So we're going to get that. It should help. Hopefully we'll be able to help you guys do this inside your own companies, but also give you the opportunity to engage with the other industries that we spoke about. Also, you are sourcing from the same suppliers that the other industries are sourcing from. So what this means is you'll be able to go talk to them in the same language, right? The experience that I have tells me that you get better information if you ask the information that they already have. So let's just do it that way. So following that, we're going to complete our consultation with the PSC members. Thank you to those of you who have done it. If any of you are interested in providing some feedback for us, please talk to your PSC member or team associate. You can speak with myself and my colleague, Callie. We'll ask you a lot of questions. I'll tell you completely non sequitur stories. It'll be the best thing. All right. So once that gets done, we're going to pull this together into an approach. We're going to take that, we're going to do some consultations with external stakeholders, right? So one of the things that I think is really important is that we understand where we position ourselves and that we recognize that there's a lot of work going on. We want to make sure we're not making the decisions without understanding the consequences, right? So sometimes we make decisions and we have some unintended consequences. Make sure we're doing it, make sure we know what's going on so we can do this efficiently and quickly and not have to deal with sort of all the extraneous stuff. Once that gets done, we're going to pull it together and provide guidance on the issues as discussed. We're starting with a list of what we call a lot of the sort of major proteins. Well, starting with land animals, just because that would tend to be the most of the animals that you source will come off land, come off conventional farming systems. So we're going to start with those. Everything here just works for all the species. If you're an insect producer or you're selling insects, the issues are the same. If I were to build my sustainability strategy for an insect industry, I would build it on the exposure of the animal industry. Same with cells, same with like everything else. So you should be able to use it. Okay, so for you, those of you that have done the climate thing, Cheryl was kind enough to like share a trillion of the acronyms that we use here. We've looked at reporting frameworks. We've looked at reporting frameworks because they provide guidance, but they also are sort of what everybody else is using. For this project, we took a look at 11 frameworks that people are using. We developed a universe of impacts that are associated with the production of animal proteins. And then we spoke with a couple of members. I did some internal work with our people. We talked to some external experts, and we came up with a list. We went back to the frameworks and said, which framework is best aligned with this, and which actually do we expect will provide the most value to you. So instead of pulling together a separate pet industry again, our ambition here is to ensure that you are able to go to your suppliers and speak to them in the same language, using the same metrics, using the same conversations. We came to the GRI, and we've done it for a bunch of reasons. First of all, those of you who are brands that are owned by corporates, your corporate office is reporting to GRI, right? So that's what they're doing. Nestle, Unilever, Mars, you're all reporting to it. Also, a bunch of the producers are doing it. So JBS plus some other global producers are reporting to to GRI. Again, use what's out there already. Secondly, they just in 2022 released the Agriculture, Aquaculture, and Fishing Sector Guidance. And it's great. It was done through a consultation. It gets updated regularly from now on. But the people that contributed to it were amazing. There's an investor group that was involved in it. So any stakeholder you have has contributed to this. So just use it. And then the third reason is the topic standards, right? So if you're really into, if biodiversity is the thing inside your organization that is the most compelling, and you think you can really build your brand around that, it provides background data, guidance, metrics, all that sort of stuff. So when you get this, I will have all of the links to it so you can go to them. But just to let you know, that's what we've chosen. The process that we just discussed is a materiality process. Again, recommend GRI 3, which defines this process. What we want to do is understand what the impacts are, right? This is our first thing. What's the impact? Second question are what are the most material impacts? And material impacts are those impacts that are the most significant, which seems just like a sentence. But that's what it is. So I think when we look at this, actual or potential impacts, I mean, I think we have a really mature industry in animal agriculture, right? I think we know that what the impacts are. They're actual, but not a lot of potential. If I'm doing insects, I'm actually probably really interested in understanding what the potential impacts are. So predict the future, but the rest of us don't have to. That's great. We're interested in that. The second thing we're interested in is assessing sort of the severity, as we call it. So scale, how grave is the impact? Some data just was released by the UNFAO, I think, put it up. Anyways, one of the UN organizations. 93 billion animals were slaughtered in 2021 for human consumption. So we know it's a lot. The impact is big, it's massive. We know it's widespread because the thing about intensive confinement systems is they exist all around the world, and they're similar all around the world. And then also, we're interested in the irremediable character, which means can we actually fix the shit that we've already done, right? And when we think about climate change, that's kind of an issue. And then we're interested in likelihood. These things are happening. And again, we're talking about commercial, conventional production here. And we're talking about the impacts not being the result of decisions being made by people to be jerks about it, but just a recognition that when you put that many animals onto that small of a space, you're going to have some impacts, right? Okay, so we're going to now sort of talk through the environmental, social, and animal welfare things. Then we'll talk a little bit about the work, and then we'll go. Okay, quickly, there can be a bit of a tendency on social impact, like leave it to legislation and regulation. How many people here have a commitment on child labor? Okay, awesome. Don't put your hands up now. But, and I've done this before up until about a month ago, you source from Canada to the US, there's absolutely no reason to have it, except for earlier this year, the US Department of Labor fined a cleaning company $1.5 million because 100 children were cleaning slaughterhouses at night in the US. So there were more than that, but Iowa and Arkansas were exempted from that list because they changed their laws to allow it. Right? So you can use a 14-year-old to clean slaughter equipment in Iowa. So it's not against the law. So legal compliance is not going to help us. Want to ensure that if you're doing this, that we use codes of conduct is probably the best way to do it. You will see that the PSC has a template. Go to them. The only thing I would suggest is that you figure out not only your tier 1 supplier, which tends to be what our code of conduct's. We really need to figure out how do we get to our tier 3 suppliers. Again, the handsome distributors we saw yesterday are not raising a lot of animals in their warehouses. So you need to go to the folks that are. And also check your non-compliance. Make sure you understand what the company is doing. We're not looking for perfection. There will be bad things that happen inside your supply chain. It's impossible for that not to happen. What you want to know is, when that does happen, what do they do about it? How quickly are they going to tell you? Do you get to read it in the newspaper, or do you get to hear it from them first? Check your non-compliance. What are they going to do about it? All right, so the environmental impacts. Again, we spoke about the impacts of intensification. So again, it's the difference, Dave Carter yesterday came up with the bold assertion that livestock is a potential solution for climate change, but not at this scale, right? We need to make sure that when we're doing it, we need to respect the soil, as Tina said just earlier today. We need to make sure that we're not overloading it because we can't do anything. So environmentally, these are the four that are most commonly identified with animal ag and animal production. So emissions we know about, biodiversity we know, natural ecosystems, which again is deforestation, and water and effluents. I think what's interesting for these is they overlap, right? Obviously, if you have too many animals on a small plot of land, there's too much manure. When there's too much manure, you get runoff, you get eutrophication, you get issues on biodiversity because the water is not set right, we lose fish. We all know what that is, right? So on the bad side, it means that this is complex, that these are complex systems that we need to address in a complex way. On the good side, it means that if you deal with one side, if you work on one issue, it actually can have a profound impact across the entire system. Okay, animal welfare. So the GRI is not really well developed in this area, so we're going to give this to you. We think as the pet industry, animal welfare is likely more significant. We're going to use the World Organization for Animal Health definition, which is really about the physical and mental state of an animal in relation to its conditions. So animal welfare is about the quality of life of animals, and it's about animals that are sentient, so those that are able to express emotions such as joy, pain, and pleasure, and only those ones that are under human control, right? So that would include things like pets, farm animals, labor animals, research animals, right? So that's what we're concerned about. So the reason I put this up here is it's really important to know that we can define what good welfare looks like. So the World Organization has done that for us. Good welfare is animals are healthy, they're comfortable, they're well nourished, they're safe, they're not suffering from unpleasant states such as pain, fear, and distress. And this doesn't mean they're always not experiencing those things. It just means they're not suffering. It's not long-term and it's not intense. Provided here from the Global Coalition for Animal Welfare, 14 of the world's largest food companies that got together, includes people from IKEA, Unilever, Nestle, down to Tyson and Maple Leaf Foods. So you've got this broad spectrum, but an entire supply chain. These are their recommendations for the things we need to worry about to provide for a good welfare inside commercial systems, written by animal welfare experts, but also vetted by those companies. All right. So we will provide you these sorts of things as we get through it, as we do all the consultations. Make sure we're not just giving you stuff that I think and can't be validated by somebody who knows stuff. It will allow you to think about how it is that you manage your sourcing, how it is you manage your formulations. Gonna just leave this with you for those of you that are interested in where you can potentially start. Always start with the policy, understand what your goals and ambitions are. That relates to your values as a company. Make that publicly available. The communication is really important. We're pretty unclear about the messages we send to producers. And so that confuses them because the market systems say, just give us cheaper stuff. That's what your procurement people ask for. And then you in this room go say, but what about all these other things? Let's be clear, let's be honest. Update your supplier vetting process and your code of conduct, check your supply chain, and then engage with everybody. There's a lot of people out there that would be really happy to help you out. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.